So there you are, sitting there in your house on a Saturday afternoon thinking the Jets are on their bye. I know they stink, but at least I won't have to hear about them this weekend. Joe Douglas is gone, no drama. Oh, but the Jets had another thing coming. I'm Glenn Norton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. Can't have it, folks. Can't have a quiet, stress-free, drama-free, Jets ruining your weekend-free weekend. No, no, no. That is not permitted. Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets quarterback. This, according to Diana Rossini, she's getting a lot of news on Rodgers. Obviously not coming from Rodgers because he is no fan of hers. But she has nailed quite a few things from inside the Jets building, One Jets Drive, locker room, whatever you want to call it. Madness, absolute madness. Rossini claiming today that Aaron Rodgers is done with the Jets. Not immediately, not right this second. But she says Rodgers wants to play in 2025. He just doesn't want to play for the Jets. I don't know if that would surprise anyone, if it should surprise anyone. I think the only surprising part of that is that he wants to play anywhere. I thought after this season, after what happened last year and then this year, that he'd just walk away. Apparently not his plan, and we'll see if she's right. The Jets are in a position where it's almost like, do you just release him? Let him move on with his life? Just like you did Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas, saying Woody should fire me, months ago. Woody didn't. Joe Douglas coming into work every day, just hanging out, watching everybody make the personnel moves, and he's just chilling. They put him out of his misery. This team isn't going to the playoffs. We know that. Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to be here. Again, should come as no surprise. We didn't really need Diana Rossini to tell us that. I think, like I said, I believe the most surprising part is the wanting to play. I really thought he'd just walk away. Beloved Peace, how are we doing, man? Says, what's going on at One Jets Drive? Must be something in the water. I'll tell you what. There's a whole bunch of I hate being employed by the Jets in the water because what a mess. What a mess. It's been this way for years. We really hoped, and one, I mean, look, you got to have hope sometimes. We really hoped that all the moves this past offseason and last year, the Rodgers thing, would this team would finally reach a level of competence that they've not had. I mean, Super Bowl, forget Super Bowl. Just a level of, hey, show up to work and don't embarrass yourself. Let's get some of that light out of there. But didn't happen. Jets still embarrassing themselves, and Aaron Rodgers, I don't blame him. Can anyone blame him for not wanting to be a part of this? Tony says you can't cut AR to the. You can. It's just an enormous cap hit, and part of me is thinking, take the cap hit. Now, worse than the Gase years, it depends on how you look at it, beloved piece. If you're talking about expectations versus outcomes, reality, yeah, this is worse than the Gase years. If you're just talking about level of quality in the football, the play, the Gase years are worse. Those 2 years, the first year Joe Douglas was the GM, which again, as we've said before, that wasn't a team he built. Draft was over, free agency was over. Joe Douglas was hired after the fact. So for that year one of Joe D, which was really the final year of the McCagnon rosters, and the previous year, those 2 years combined, this team was outscored by over 400 points, worse than franchise history by quite a stretch. So in terms of the product, it's never been worse. But in terms of the drama, this is unbelievable. I mean, the GM is gone. And listen, there were people, and I'm not here to say Aaron Rodgers is the biggest problem here. I'm not here to say he's the only reason the Jets are where they are. He's part of the reason. I don't think Aaron Rodgers would disagree with that. But there were a lot of people who get to do some victory laps because there were folks out there. They were on Twitter. They were on the message boards at Jet Nation. And they were saying, this guy's he's gonna doom your franchise. He's gonna come in, he's gonna have the ego. When things don't go his way, people are gonna get fired, except he won't get fired. Well, now he doesn't have to get cut. And like I said, maybe you do. But what do you do if you cut him? Do you play Tyrod Taylor? And if so, for what reason? At that point, just play Martinez. Let him line up under center. Maybe he develops into a backup or something. But you certainly, where's the value in having Tyrod Taylor come in and win you 2 or 3 games and just hurt your draft position? Not that draft position matters. They'll screw it up anyway. It's what they do. It doesn't matter who the GM is. Even though, like I said, the last guy brought some talent in, but it doesn't matter. They'll find a way to screw it up. It's what they do. Um, let's see. Indy Jets. Rodgers is a huge reason. Absolutely. Yeah, and Dan says Martinez, starting QB who only played with one player, Lazard. They started an O-line that had 0 snaps together. That Tony, I've brought that up a few times. I thought that was a big mistake. I thought having basically a completely overhauled offensive line, and you don't play them at all in the preseason. And I've said this. People still say, I don't know why. Well, I guess I do know why. People aren't paying attention. But the O-lines come on fine now. 6 weeks in a row, they've been absolutely fine. They've been probably better than league average in a lot of categories. They're, like I said, I think PFF had them ranked 15th on the season. So on the year, they're dead center in the middle of the NFL. That's despite being terrible for the first 5 weeks. So you would have to imagine over the last 5-6 weeks, they're probably top 10, top 12 unit. No one looks up to him as a leader, great quarterback, but never led anyone. I think, last year he was voted the most inspirational guy on the team and great leader and all that. I think he tried to lead, but it's hard to lead when you're losing. And then Rodgers didn't do himself any favors publicly blaming Mike Williams, even if it was Mike Williams' fault. You just don't do that as a leader. So that was a bad job by him. Let's see. No one looks up. We covered that. Rodgers is he's all about him. Listen, and a lot of guys are. It's just a shame it's turned out this way. Dano says Travis is NFI. Yeah, I didn't catch where someone asked for him to play. But yeah, he can't play this year. At least that's all I've heard, because Dano's saying here, confirm whether or not he can return the final 2 games if we'd like him to and he's healthy. Everything I've heard has been he's NFI'd, he can't play this year. But I'll actually go see if I can find anything on that, Dano. I've sort of taken the experts at their word. I believe it was Rich Cimini, and I've heard some others say the Jets cannot play him this year. He's NFI'd. If that's wrong, we'll take a look, and yeah, if you can get him in there for a couple games, absolutely. Roger, how we doing? Says, if you look at the Jets' history, the only time they're good is when we have great coaching, and coaching matters so much. I think people underrate how much coaching matters. JD and Sal are not good coaches and GM. Gruden is the only Woody hire that can bring back respectability. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Gruden wasn't doing great in Vegas. He had the controversy with the emails where he was basically what ended up forcing him to resign. I think he'll end up back in the league. He's worked with, I think he worked with Sean Payton this offseason, preseason in Denver. Or maybe that was whenever it was. Gruden worked with someone this offseason. Let's see. Dano says all I've heard is Dano, that's the interesting thing with Jordan Travis, because if you look back, not that I'm suggesting you do, but the Jets sent out a tweet probably around week 2 or 3, where Jordan Travis was like in a red QB practice jersey. So I was like, oh, I didn't know he could do that. I thought he was NFI. I didn't know he could practice, but here's a picture of him in a red jersey at practice. Look, maybe they have quarterbacks throwing the red jerseys even if they're not practicing. I don't know. But I was under the impression he was practicing, but then even back then, the talk was he's NFI, cannot practice, cannot play, nothing. And I doubt the Jets, well, maybe they would have him practice and be foolish enough to tweet out a picture of him at practice. So you're making me want to dig deeper on the NFI thing, Dano. It's been a very long time since I looked at anything on that, and as I said, I've relied on those, the Rich Ciminis of the world who have referenced it and said he can't play this year. Tony says Travis has everything you need in a GM except arm strength. Has a weaker arm than Tua. I don't know if it's weaker than Tua. It's mid tier. It's he definitely doesn't have a cannon. He's not a guy who's gonna let it rip and throw deep balls all around the field, deep outs or stuff like that. It will be a struggle. But leadership, mobility, accuracy, protecting the ball. Speaking of that, I don't know who's watching any college football games right now. I haven't looked up in a few minutes, but Kansas making a game of it in Colorado. Happy to see that because I'm a big Jalen Daniels guy. Not Jaden. He's the probably offensive rookie of the year, but Jalen Daniels of Kansas, prospect I like, a little bit older. The problem with him is he's had some injuries, some back injuries, missed some time last year. Him and Cam Ward were two guys I really was drawn to a few years ago and became big fans of. Ward had the big year again last year, and Daniels missed the season. He's back this year, playing again, playing well, and they were leading Colorado by 6 last time I looked in the third quarter. I'd love to see Jalen Daniels get a big win against a nationally ranked team and put himself on some radars. Check him out if you haven't. Jalen Daniels, Kansas quarterback, good arm, good legs. Let's see what else we got here. Jack Palmer says, as a Finns fan, I'm laughing at the Jets' hardship and dysfunction. Well, I mean, you should. You're a rival fan. But I mean, the Dolphins. Yay, you got a fast receiver. Not a very good team either. Both teams are very bad right now. I wouldn't be like when the Jets suck, which is often. I kind of don't make a point of laughing at other teams that suck because who cares? Great, your team sucks too. Tua, who knows how long he's gonna. It's almost like they got to keep wheeling Tua back out there because they gave him all that money. It's like, look, dude, this might kill you, but we're not taking this cap hit. So we're suiting you up and we're rolling you back out there. So they'll just keep sending Tua out there as long as he's, as long as he can stand up. Rodgers looks disgusting. He does. He looks terrible. Let's see. Beloved Peace said the one good thing that come out of this is it's a full-scale rebuild. Yeah, it is. I mean, that brings us to the second topic, actually. Wanted to talk about Rodgers and full-scale rebuild. Eric Mangini's name came up as a possible head coach candidate. What next? Joe Walton? Rich Kotite? Bruce Coslett? Like a couple days ago, it's Rex Ryan. Except the Rex thing, to be fair, was Rex himself saying, I want to come back. I want to be there. Diana Rossini, which could be out of thin air, could be her guessing, could be her throwing out a name to do this, to get people to talk about it, mention her name, because that's what this game is about. When you work for the ESPNs of the world, Jack says, I love football and this podcast, but I hate my division rivals. Yeah, look, Jack, I'm right there with you. But honestly, when the Jets are this bad, I just don't care. And I can't bring myself. I'm too busy being angry at the Jets to hate on division rivals. They're not even a topic at this point. It kills me that the Patriots got Drake May. Drake May was my favorite quarterback in this damn class, and now he's a damn Patriot. And he's probably going to be amazing. He's probably going to be great. Caleb Williams. Look, Caleb Williams is really good, and I just had questions about his ability. Like, was he going to be a guy that could settle down? Because I watched him in college, and he would make all these incredible throws, but the number of times I saw him, take 8, 9, 10, 11 seconds for a play to develop, it's like, all right, you can do that sometimes, but are you going to be able to do that reliably in the NFL on a consistent basis? I don't think so. And that's not to say he won't get better. I just, like, from a pure pocket passer, drop back, let it rip. And look, May can't run like Caleb can, but he can run. So I preferred May, but I think they'll both be really good players. But I felt like the Pats are going to come out of that draft with either Marvin Harrison or Drake May, like neither guy that you want to have to stop for the next 10 years. Would I rather have Mangini or Rex? God. I mean, Rex had a much better record. I mean, neither is great. What are their career records? I looked them up a second ago. Eric Mangini, career winning percentage 407, 0-1 in the playoffs. Rex Ryan, career winning percentage 489, 4-2 in the playoffs. That's Rex with the Jets and Bills, and Mangini with the Jets and Browns. So you got one guy with a 489 winning percentage and 4-2 in the playoffs, and another guy with a 407 winning percentage, 0-1 in the playoffs. Um, I mean, I if we're just talking pure head coach, I'd have to say Rex. If you're saying GM or front office guy, I'd say Mangini. I think Mangini's overrated a little bit. I think Terry Bradway did some good work for him. Um, but Mangini, in terms of putting an organization together, is a more disciplined, structured, level-headed guy, whereas Rex would just go hog wild and try to cut everyone trade. You couldn't. I mean, Rex is the drafts when Rex was here. And listen, I don't know when he did or did not have influence. He claims his last year or two, they completely ignored him in the draft room, which if I was a part of those drafts, I'd say the same thing. If I was in that room, if I was in a position of authority when John Idzik was picking players and it was a year after the fact, I'd be like, nobody listened to me. I wouldn't, even if I made every one of those picks. Those drafts were so bad, I couldn't imagine taking basically ending my career as an evaluator by saying, yes, I wanted Jalen Saunders, and yes, I wanted, Shaq Evans, and God, that class was so bad. Let's see. Jack again says, if guys get fired as head coaches, can they come back as head coach? They can. It's just rare. Gruden in Oakland, because I brought up that example that it never happens, having forgotten Gruden does it. It's so rare. It's so incredibly rare. But the couple of things that, and again, I'm not saying it should be Rex. I'm not saying it should be Mangini. I think with Rex, the fact that Woody, it was rumored, and I was told at the time by somebody that Woody didn't want to fire him. But he understood he had to. There was too much losing, which, by the way, as I've said, mentioned yesterday to Chris Schubert, I don't know how many folks realize it. It's one of those things, you follow this to any team you follow them long enough. Like, there are going to be trends that you don't really notice because you're so focused on the moment. And we get so focused on playoffs, right? The Jets haven't made the playoffs in 14 years. The Jets haven't made the playoffs in 14 years. And that's sort of the trend, the streak that you focus on. Rex Ryan, people wanted him fired for going 8-8 or whatever. In the 14 years since then, the Jets have won 8 games one time. They can't even get to 8 wins. Rex did it twice, and it was like, fire this bum. 8-8, that sucks. 8-8 is now where the Jets aspire to get to one day. Maybe one day, well, either 8-9 or 9-8. But yeah, it's been so bad for so long that again the focus becomes the playoffs. But Mangini, listen, Eric Mangini, it's a tough call to make, right? There were some good players that he had some. He had what is, in my opinion, the worst pick in the history of the Jets as an organization was Vernon Gholston. Now, some people say it's Zach Wilson, but that becomes a conversation about sort of overall impact on the team. Like, I just mean in terms of where were you drafted and how did you produce as an individual player? There's no worse than Vernon Gholston. Vernon Gholston literally never got anything more than a tackle. 6th overall pick, never had a sack, never forced a fumble, never picked up a fumble. Took him till year 2 to get a tackle for loss. And that, but I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think that was because his rookie year, it was always so easy to remember because Vernon Gholston had a clause in his contract as a rookie that if he got a sack, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, or a tackle for loss, any one of those things, I think it triggered like a $3 million bonus, and he didn't get it. Like, he did not get one of any of those. So he didn't get his bonus. I think he did have some tackles for loss, like 3 or 4 or 5, something like that in year 2, and I think a couple more in year 3. And then he was out of the league. Out of the league in 3 years, never made a play. Look, D-Rob was a bust, but here's the thing with that, Ted. And this is Mangini. He was a 310-pound 3-tech, and they fired Herm. They bring in Mangini, and Mangini tries to make him a 310-pound nose tackle. He was played out of position, so he was getting overmatched. And then it turned out he had a degenerative hip condition that the Jets knew about when they drafted him. I mean, that alone might make him a bigger bust, but that speaks to the Jets' stupidity. They knew he had a degenerative hip condition that would limit his career, and they still drafted him, and then they played him out of position. So I feel like Dwayne Robertson got screwed, really, by the Jets. Shouldn't have even been drafted, at least not in the first round. And he had some good moments. So was he a bust overall? Yes, but like not all busts are equal. Some guys just flat out cannot play. They show up day one and get their asses kicked for a year or two and they're out of the league. That didn't really happen with Dwayne Robertson. He showed up, he played okay at times, played out of position, and then I don't know at what point the hip started bothering him. If it did start bothering him, but he got traded to Denver for a 7, I believe, and spent a year or two there, and then he was gone. So all in all, a bust, but not nobody in my mind is on the level of Vernon Golston. Nobody. You didn't not one sack in 3 years. Now, if you drafted Zach Wilson and like he didn't win a game for 3 years, I'd be like, okay, they're on par. They're the same guy. But Zach won some football games. He threw some touchdown passes. He ran for some touchdowns. He caught a touchdown. He did the thing he was brought in to do, just didn't do it enough. Golston never, not one time ever. Tony says Jets do not need a full rebuild. Sign Sherwood, Eccles, and Moses, and let everyone else walk. I think that'll be our next. My hope is our episode next week. Myself, Dylan, Chris will be to go through the full roster and do a keep them or dump them. And maybe something a little different than that even. I have a couple of ideas, but yeah, Tony, I think there's some more. You keep more than that. Because look, here's a perfect example, right? Because I think we get so caught up with the starters, and I've looked at the starters; they play the majority of the reps. They're the most important guys on the team. I get that, but that doesn't mean the backups don't have value. So there are other guys, and yes, I have a bias because I'm a big fan. But I look at this roster and I'm like, all right, would I keep Chaz Surratt? His brother Sage used to be a wide receiver for Wake Forest, and then tight end in the UFL, and he's still bouncing around. But anyway, I would keep Surratt. He's a backup, but he's a very good backup. And Mosley's going to be on his way out. And to me, you want as few holes as possible on your roster. Like you want, even when you're talking about third, fourth string guys, if you have guys who can play who are good enough to be on a roster, keep them there. JE, this is turning into a fun discussion, JE. Now we're just talking about huge Jets busts. Blair Thomas. Blair Thomas is a special one to me, will always have a place in my heart because from my age, when I first started following this football team, Blair Thomas is the first draft pick I can recall. I didn't we all go through stages of your fandom and when you learn new things. I'd been following the Jets for a couple years. I was like 11, 12 years old. I had no idea what the NFL draft was. And once I learned about the NFL draft, I started reading about the NFL draft. And I remember reading that Jeff George was going to be the first overall pick and the Jets were going to take Blair Thomas. And they did. And I thought, being a kid, oh, that must mean he's good. Like, of course he's going to be good. He was a second and third player pick. He's going to be awesome. He was not. But even Blair Thomas had a couple of good games, caught on with the Cowboys for a while. I think he had like a 6 or 7 year career, but came nowhere near the what was expected. Johnny Lamb Jones, I've read about, predates me by a little bit. Kyle Brady, huge bust. Jeff Lageman was a good player. Had some double-digit sack years, if I'm not mistaken. Went to the Jacksonville Jaguars, played really well there. I'm always curious. Like, I don't know why Lageman's name often gets thrown in with the busts. Look at Jeff Lageman's career numbers. He was not bad. He was not a bad player. D. Milner. Look, here's the thing with D. Milner. Let's be fair here. And even though he was an Idzik guy, got to be fair and call it like it is. It was injuries. He played well. Actually, I take that back. Let me correct that. His last couple of NFL games, he only played in a couple. He didn't play many games because he was hurt. But his last couple games, which I believe were in year 2, he played really well. And it looked like the light had come on. He had a game against Cleveland late his rookie year. I kid you not, I think he was targeted like 18 times. And he didn't, considering he was targeted 18 times against, what was it, Josh Gordon or whatever, who had that monster year. Like Milner had some games where you could say he's starting to get it. The lights come on for this kid. I think he had a really good game against the Chargers. One against the Packers maybe, but the injuries just wouldn't stop mounting. So was he a bust? Yes, but he was a young corner who looked like it was starting to turn the corner, but he just couldn't stay on the field. No pun intended there. Couldn't stay on the field, and he ended up having to go. After this season is the end of the road for Aaron. Well, Jack, who knows? I mean, this report says he wants to play again. Wouldn't it be hilarious? Um, Somebody tweeted it this morning, and my first instinct was, "Oh, this is just stupid." And then I thought, you know what? Maybe it's not. What if the Minnesota Vikings? What if they don't want to pay Sam Darnold 30 or $40 million? What if they want a veteran another year to bridge for JJ McCarthy? Because McCarthy won't get any real action this year because of his injury. Um, I would say it's unlikely, but not impossible. And the Vikings would probably love it if they thought they could win with Rodgers. But the thing is, here's the thing. When the Jets were trading for Rodgers, nobody else was trading for him, which is what frustrated the hell out of me and why I said they gave up too much. Um, but this isn't a trade situation now. If the Jets grant Rodgers his release and he's willing to play for X amount for a team that is desperate for quarterback help, then he can play another year. So it may not be the end of the road for him. End of the road with the Jets for sure. Ted says, plain and simple, Woody or Christopher has to hire a GM and let them decide what's good for the team and stay out of it. Well, we'd all like that, wouldn't we, Ted? Apparently not a thing they do at One Jets Drive. J.E., Jets fan since 81. I'm 87 for me, J.E. Quentin Coples, yeah, we talked about him on last night's show. Or I talked about him 2 days ago. I did a little, popped on and did a show for something, and yeah, talked about Coples. Loggeman drafted in the first round when they thought he could be available in the second. Possibly, and it happens, doesn't it, Ted? Every year we see a guy go and everyone, people go, oh, he would have been there later, and maybe he would have, maybe he wouldn't have. My only thing is that he's often spoken about like a guy who wasn't good, and he was a pretty good player. Got a big contract from Jacksonville, if I'm not mistaken, and played all right for them for a few years. Aaron is the epitome of arm talent. Saying that would get me laughed out of the building. I don't know what you mean by that, Jack, to be honest. The epitome of arm talent? Saying that would get me laughed out of the building. I'm not sure what you mean by that, bud. He's I mean, in his current state, do you mean that? Like he can't throw the ball because he's not throwing the ball right now. Here's what's going to be interesting after the bye. I mentioned this the other day. If for anyone who missed it, Boomer Esiason, former Jets quarterback, he said the other day that he thinks Rodgers is playing with a bad left leg. He guessed hamstring based on the way Rodgers was keeping the weight off of his leg when he was throwing, keeping his weight off his front leg when he followed through. So if there is an injury there, and that's been limiting what Rodgers can do, and he now has 2 weeks to rest, and if he comes back and, I don't expect him to come back and look like Aaron Rodgers of old, but if he just comes back and plays much better, then he's going to put himself in a position because basically, I think from this point on, Aaron Rodgers is auditioning for a job. That's what this part of the season has become for a lot of Jets players. J.E., I miss scoring like with Ken O'Brien, Altoon, Wesley Walker, Freeman McNeil, Johnny Hector, Mickey. Those are all the guys, that I remember in my youth. I always say, when I used to live in the Bronx as a kid and walk up and down the street, that all the little shops that would have the sports posters out front. And like there were a few Jets players they'd always have, and a few you'd always have like Lawrence Taylor, Phil Simms were the big ones for the Giants. And then the Jets, you'd always see Ken O'Brien, Wesley Walker, Altoon, all the guys you just mentioned. Mark Gastineau, of course. Klecko, for some reason, wasn't big. I think that might be near the end with Klecko when he'd gone to the Colts by then. If I'm not, that might be the case. I remember Kuiper saying after the Jets drafted him, it's obvious to me the Jets don't know what this draft is about. Was that Loggeman? I remember that quote. I can't remember which player it was. Ted, give me a little help there. Was that O'Brien? Maybe that was O'Brien. I think that was O'Brien. But whoever it was, Kuiper has had the Jets have given everyone plenty of material over the years. But Eric Mangini, getting back to that, we're drifting a bit because listen, it's a college football Saturday. I got a couple games on. They've shut down in the last few minutes, so I don't know who's doing what. I'm sure many of you were watching some football. What the hell happened with Boston College in North Carolina? I thought that game would be remotely close. It was not. It was, even the last time I looked at it, it was like, all right, let's shut that one off. It was like 41-7, something ridiculous like that. So we're just hanging out, watching a little college football, talking a little bit about the Jets' future. Like I said, Mangini, Yes, I guess, yeah, Loggerman. I'm guessing you didn't mean ligament, Ted. Was that autocorrect or voice to text, and they're making you look like you said Jeff Ligament? Warren Sapp, Kyle Brady, that one stung. I remember going into that draft and just thinking that, everybody's like, "There's no way Warren Sapp's gonna fall to the Jets." And he did. And, that, you know, we want Sapp, and the Jets were like, "No, we don't. We're gonna take this blocking tight end." Another guy who went to Jacksonville. And look, he had a nice career as a blocking tight end. I'm sure he was a really good dude. Everything kind of always had was always under the impression that Brady was a good dude, and he just didn't play well for the Jets, as so many others don't. And Johnny Mitchell did, right? Remember Johnny Mitchell, the other tight end out of Nebraska, who looked like he was going to be a world beater early on, and he was not. He retired. He looked really good at times and stepped aside and retired. Let's take a quick walk down memory lane of the Eric Mangini drafts. If we're talking about, because if he comes back, if Eric Mangini comes back, he's going to want full control. If you're bringing him back as your coach, fancies himself as a personnel guy, and he wants to be the guy. If you're putting him in charge, so Eric Mangini, 3 drafts with the Jets. DeBrickashaw Ferguson and Nick Mangold, obviously monster picks, huge additions. Kellen Clemens was a waste of a pick. Anthony Schlegel, waste of a pick. Eric Smith, nice safety. Had 5 or 6 interceptions in 6 years. The occasional big hit, but not exactly. Look, for a third round pick, was he a great hit? No, but we've had a lot worse. I would call that a hit. Brad Smith, kick returner, didn't do anything as a receiver. Less than 1,000 yards in 129 career games. Not, excuse me, not a guy who did anything as a receiver. Leon Washington, a couple of really good years as a guy. He carry the ball 60, 65 times for you. Jason Pasayak did nothing. Drew Coleman, really good value pick. He hung around. How long did he play in the league? 5, 6 years? Yeah, 6 seasons for Coleman, 13 starts. Not a bad pick. Titus Adams never played. What did he play? 2 games. Then, of course, you had the following year, Darrelle Revis, which, like I said, I remember, and this has been published and reported before. I remember somebody telling me at camp one year. I don't know how widely known it was back then, but I was just having a conversation with a Jets employee, if you will, and I mentioned Revis, and he was like, "Oh, that was all Terry. That was like Terry Bradway went and watched Revis. I forget who it was against, but he said he got on the phone. He didn't even want to wait till he got back to the facility. He called the Jets and he was like, trade up, do whatever it takes, trade up to get this guy. And Mangini and Tannenbaum took that advice, and they got Revis. Then you had David Harris, another great pick, a great Jet. Then you had 2 more picks. Jacob Bender never played. Chansey Stuckey was part of the trade. I believe the Braylon Edwards trade. Never really did anything. His best year, he had 359 yards. Had 346 yards again about 4 years later. But what do you have? He had 1,000 yards in 55 career games. So Chansey Stuckey, again, 7th rounder, kind of a nothing pick. Jacob Bender never played. No, I take that back. He played 2 games. I don't know if it was for the Jets. And then Harrison Revis. So some good stuff, some not so good stuff. Then the following year, Vernon Golston, for my money, biggest bust in team history. And there are many. Dustin Keller, nice pick there. Dwight Lowry, not a bad pick there. He, again, not a great player, but he played in a ton of games. Another guy who went to Jacksonville. God, is this a trend that I've not noticed before? But yeah, he played 3 years as a Jet. Did Lowry. Nice player. Eric Ainge, big time drug problems. Never played a game for the Jets. I think he retired soon after being drafted. Jets used a 5th rounder on him. And shortly after that, he retired. Turned out he was addicted to heroin in college, and he had a lot of problems to work through. Marcus Henry, wide receiver, never played. Nate Garner, offensive lineman, who would go on and have what he started 8 games with the Dolphins at one point. But that was it. He played. See, now something's up with this. This says I'm on PFR here. PFR says Nate Garner played 74 career games. But then when I click to see where he played year to year, it has 1 year where he played 8 games for the Dolphins. So let's see. Okay, see, that's weird. Yeah, that's wrong because here's a bunch of others. He did so he played, and I was gonna say I thought he was a Dolphin. He was 2008. Didn't play for the Dolphins. He did play some games for them in 2009. Looks like he started 7 or 8 games. Started another one in 11. Started a few more in 12. Started a few more in 13. So he's cup of coffee, or not so much cup of coffee, but a couple of opportunities here and there to start a handful of games for Garner. And let's see who else we've got. There we go. Oh, he was the last guy in that class. So you had a Golston, a monumental bust. You had Keller, who was a nice player. Lowry, who's a nice player. Ainge, who had his demons, never played. Marcus Henry never played. Nate Garner never played for the Jets. Revis, obviously a home run. David Harris, obviously a home run. Jacob Bender, Chansey Stuckey, never did anything. Brick and Mangold, obvious studs. Clemens, career backup. I mean, second round pick. Is that a bust? Is that, he threw 16 touchdowns in his career. I thought he did more. He was a bust. For some reason, I thought Kellen Clemens had a couple of solid years. I didn't realize his numbers were so poor. 16 touchdowns in 64 games. It's not a good ratio. Again, Schlegel, nothing. Smith, mid to low tier starter. Brad Smith, return man. Leon Washington, 65, 70 carries a year. And a good explosive return man, to be fair. So have Mangini draft you a return man, apparently. Pasiak didn't play. Coleman, really good value pick in the 6th round. So there's some home runs in there, but there's some misses. As is the case, as I've said, yeah, Danny Ainge's nephew. I do remember that. Crazy story. Walked into a baseball card store one. This is many years ago. You walk into a store and you shop around for a little bit, and you come to the conclusion you don't want to buy anything, but you feel bad because maybe the person answered a few questions for you. Now you feel like you've wasted their time. I did that one time. I walked into a baseball card shop and spent a little time, and I'm like, oh, now I feel bad. I feel like I should buy something. And the guy says to me, is there anything in particular you're looking for? I thought, I know. I said, I'll ask for a card that I know exists, but is super rare. And then I can just say, oh, sorry, that's what I was looking for. And I go, yeah, you got any cards from Danny Ainge when he played with the Blue Jays? This dude is like, oh, yeah, right here. There you go. And he handed it to me. I was like, Jesus. I didn't, like, it literally was on the top of a pile that was arm's length from him. I thought, how the hell did this guy have a Danny Ainge Blue Jays card at the tip of his fingers? And that's the card. And so I bought it. I was like, I did kind of want it. But yeah, just that Danny Ainge. I was like, Jesus, how did that happen? But Danny Ainge's nephew, indeed. Let's see, David. Hope you're well. Scotland calling. How we doing up there, man? Like I said, it's been so long. The thing is, David, I would love to come up to Scotland and hang out and bring the family up there. I'd love it up there. You can't. Everything's so expensive. You can't do anything. I'm afraid to walk into a damn McDonald's. I have to take out a second mortgage on my house for if I want to supersize something. It's ridiculous. Forget about a 7 or 8 hour road trip with hotels and B&Bs and all that. Jesus, this cost of living is brutal. Brad Smith, yeah, like I said, I saw that he got a contract with Buffalo. Maybe maybe Aaron will end up in Jacksonville. Doubt that. Kerry Rhodes, yep. Kerry Rhodes. Valerie says all rumors. They are, Valerie. These are rumors, but they're pretty believable. Well, the Mangini thing, I think, is just the Rodgers thing is very believable, and I think that's worth having a conversation about. So that's why I'm doing it. I thought I'd hop in here and talk to you guys about Aaron and his desire to leave. Just that I'm just peeking here, and it looks like Kansas is up 23-21. And they're driving, and they're inside. Like, for those of you who missed it, I'm a big Jalen Daniels guy, the Kansas quarterback. I like him a lot. So I'm hoping he plays well. But like I said, had back injuries last year, bounced back from it this year. And what do we got? First and goal from about the 6, Kansas stuffed. I don't know if you're not allowed to do like play by play, I think, on YouTube. I think if you do like every 10th play or something, they'll let you slide. And I don't think there's many people tuning into an Aaron Rodgers podcast or a podcast about Aaron Rodgers to hear about Kansas. But I'll tell you what, Kansas up by 2. If they can punch it in here, go up by 9, maybe 10 if you go for 2. We'll see there. Let's see. I got the Deion Sanders Yankees rookie card. Oh man, I remember. Look, that's the first we'd heard of Deion, right? As kids in New York, anyway. I can still remember sitting and reading the newspaper article about this flashy young kid outfielder who, he was going to be the Jets' version of Bo Jackson. Dude, Bo Jackson was a dude. Deion, great athlete, but let's line those guys up on the goal line and see who wins that battle. I think Kansas may have just punched it in. They did. Devin Neal, Kansas running back. He's another one. Kansas has some players that I really like. Devin Neal is one of them. Jalen Daniels another. I got a receiver, Grimm, number 11. Let's see. Yep, right up the middle. Is he in? Yeah, he's in. So Kansas taking the 9-point lead against Colorado. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, the Deion, the coach prime with the Yankees. And I'll tell you what though, that if you're a Yankee fan from that era and you remember that, you remember Deion being a Yankee, that play and how it was almost poetic against the Royals, that inside the park home run. What does Deion do? He hits a line drive to center field, and Bo Jackson, the nemesis, the other NFL baseball player, comes screaming in from center field, tries to make a diving catch, and it skips under his glove, rolls all the way to the wall. Deion, fastest damn baseball player you've ever seen in your life, rounding the bases, collision at home plate. They call him safe. Deion's pumping his fist. Yankee fans going crazy. I used to love baseball. It's so bad that they made it what it is now. It is what it is. Anyway, I'm rambling now. We're now on to baseball. We're on to Coach Prime because I'm talking about the Colorado Buffaloes. No, because I was talking about Danny Ainge because of Eric Ainge. See how this all ties in? Eric Ainge, Danny Ainge, 2 sport athletes, Prime, Bo. We're all over the place. Aaron Rodgers has posted an ayahuasca farm. He probably has one already. Do you think the Jets will have their own stadium only if Woody sells? Look, I don't think Woody's selling, folks, ever. I think he's gonna hand it down to his kids. We're seeing a couple weeks ago, he had his son in the locker room handing out game balls. I mean, he's the next in line. You see this kid in the draft room every year. So Woody's got him at work, looking at how things run. I think it's going to be like the Jones family in Dallas, keeping up with the Joneses. And I think Woody is going to hand the Jets off to one of his kids. And that's just kind of, that's a very Jetsy thing to do. Well, I shouldn't even say it's Jetsy. Maybe he'll be better. Maybe when Brick Johnson, I think that's his name. Someone tweeted out, or not tweeted out. Somebody said in the Jet Nation message boards, they mentioned him the other day, Brick Johnson. Yeah, we'll see if, what I always say to people when they say to me like, "Oh, sell, Woody, come on, sell," and I just say, "Would you? Would you sell?" And if you're being honest with yourself, you wouldn't. Not a chance in hell, if you own this football team, that you would sell it to somebody else. It's a cash cow. The money is coming in. You're charging friggin' $15 a beer or whatever it is nowadays. Where are my season ticket holders? Where are my people going to games? What's a Bud Light costing MetLife nowadays? Lauren says, do you think Jaime would agree to the Jets financing a $2 billion stadium? I don't know. That's a lot of money. If Jaime thought there'd be a good return on that investment, though, Lauren, you never know. And let's be honest, folks. Woody's under fire right now, and rightfully so. But the reason the Jets don't have a stadium is because of Dolan. Charles Dolan? Not Charles Dolan. James Dolan. The Knicks owner, the MSG owner. They lied about the West Side Rail Yards and said it was going to be developed, and that's, Woody you can't build a stadium. The Jets wanted to build a West Side Stadium. Um, they had all the plans were publicly released, what it was going to look like, and Dolan fought it, and the Jets. I mean, at the same time, though, Woody, could you have not found another location? Like, was there not another place in all of New York City, or perhaps a surrounding suburb where you wouldn't? I mean, you see it all the time. You see teams build stadiums just outside. Um, Laura, sorry, I know you were being sarcastic. I get that, but as I was noticing your sarcasm, I thought to myself, that's actually a real question. Like, Jaime would probably be part of that conversation. So, don't the humor isn't lost on me. It's just as the humor hit me, the reality did too, and it was like he would probably have to be involved in that process. Going to Shea was a better experience than MetLife. Again, predates me, and I didn't look. I didn't go to a lot of games when I was a kid. I moved a lot, in and out of New York a lot. When I did live in New York, I sure as hell couldn't afford tickets to a game. Um, my family members who did like sports, none of them could afford to go to a game. Um, my old man hated sport. He had no time for sports. He hated that I liked sports. So there was no outlet for me to get to games. That's why a few years ago when I moved back to the States, back to Jersey as an adult, like one of the first things I did, like I'm buying season tickets. And I got season tickets. Um, but I've heard, there were a lot of people who enjoyed Shea more. NFL wanted a shared stadium. Yeah, well, I think Dolan's concern is that it was going to be a multi-purpose facility, and it would have put MSG out of business because it was going to be much bigger, more modern. It would have been the hot ticket, so that's where people would have wanted to hold their events. And yeah, 30-21, by the way, Kansas over Colorado. Yeah, Shador and the Buffs have the football. But we'll wrap this one up. Went longer than I thought, but why the hell not? Having a little bit of fun, laughing at the Jets and amongst ourselves, and Mangini coming back. That's a conversation to have. It's again that it's a the way Rossini worded it. At least from what I saw, someone sent me the tweet or sent me the sort of bullet points on the Rossini story, and it said, watch out for Mangini as a name at head coach. That was the extent of it. Um, I would have a hard time believing that that would happen. I don't think they split on good terms last time, Woody and Mangini. In fact, Mangini had come out and said publicly that Woody promised him, no matter what happens this year, you're coming back. And then they had this huge collapse, and he fired him. So he went back on his word. And man, Kansas has the ball again. It's just Buffalo just punted, or the Buffaloes just punted. Go. All right. I'm going to keep watching this game. You guys watch what you're watching. Whatever game of the day, the game that you're most enjoying. Let's see what else is going out there live. Let's throw out some live scores. Arizona State up 28-17. West Virginia 31-14 over Central Florida. What else we got? Michigan 38-6, big over Northwestern. No surprise there. Oklahoma State down 35-28 to Texas Tech. And Penn State up 23-22. I'm going to want to watch that one later. Minnesota, like a lot of their players. Penn State, obviously some good players there. Expect a lot of draft talk in the coming days, weeks, months, rest of this year, up until the draft. And then we'll start trying to convince ourselves that the Jets are going to be good. They're probably not. But that'll wrap this one up. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, for hanging out. Much appreciated. We'll catch you again soon. And listen, when news breaks tomorrow of something else dramatic or whatever, Jetsy, at some point in the next 24 to 48 hours, this probably won't be the last time we see each other. Have a good one, Jets fans.